Objection.
Sustained.
Correct?
Okay.
Sustained.
Is that 10%?
That is 10%.
Objection. Move to strike.
Yeah, there's sustained and it's stricken.
Objection.
Sustained. I'm going to see your sidebar for a second.
To January 29th.
Objection.
So can you narrow that, Mr. Jackson?
Sure.
I object to the whole line of inquiry.
Then I need to see your sidebar. How much longer? I'm just trying to figure out.
I'm wrapping it up, Judge.
Okay.
It's not going to be long.
I'm not curbing you in any way. We just
Understand. Respectfully, it won't be very much longer.
Do you know why he gave an 8-second range?
Objection.
So ask it differently, Mr.
Okay. Objection.
I'm going to allow it. Do you agree with that?
Never objection.
I'm going to allow that.
No. Objection.
I'm going to allow it.
Do any of the text stream events or do any of the data that you've reviewed either yourself through Mr. Burgess's report, through Dr. Welch's report, do any of the data indicate that there was a collision on January 29th, 2022 at any time?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
She needs to be in control. She needs to be the one with the power. She needs to make sure they understand she holds all the power, not them. I believe this so much so that if I were advising Karen Reed and her attorneys, I would be coaching them on how to, this is going to sound completely insane, but I think you have to do this with her. How can you build into your case some way to feed her ego so that she feels like she's in control and you're over here unable to be harmed by her ego? Because that is what's going on here. Alan Jackson and Robert Alessi represent everything that she despises and loathes, but also envies about law, the legal system, and who she is as a person.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the I Don't Belong Here show, and I am your host, Samantha Benigno. I am a behavioral scientist, a career psychotherapist, a 6th-year PhD candidate in clinical psychology, a master's level psychologist and counselor, and I am here breaking down the Karen Reed case. Yesterday was quite the day. So the defense began their case in chief, and it was quite the roller coaster of a day, very, very intense. And I got the sense that all of us, by the end of yesterday, had been through such an incredibly challenging emotional day that everyone went dark. It was like nobody's streaming, nobody's thinking about the case. All of us needed a break. And that's the way it felt, right? Because what a hell of a way to end the week. The way that DeSogra ended his testimony, I thought was a pretty big win for the defense. I believe it was at the very end where Alan Jackson asks,
were you being truthful when you indicated that you have a certain expertise in EDR data?
Yes.
Were you being truthful when you indicated that you did review Mr. Burgess's data and Mr. Welch's data as reflected in their reports and PowerPoints?
Yes.
Were you being truthful about your credentials?
Yes.
Have you ever lied about your credentials?
No.
You hold a bachelor's degree
Yes.
and you hold a master's degree.
I do.
You ever lied to anybody about that?
No.
so it was great. It was great. And it was definitely, I'm pretty sure it was on redirect. So it must have just been spur of the moment thinking on Jackson's part, which was a great way to end the day. And, you know, there's just no question that the caliber of human being, when we look at DeSogra versus Welcher and Burgess, I mean, they come across as pay-to-play witnesses. They really, really do. And it doesn't help that Aperture's having dinner with the Massachusetts Bar Association in Boston 2 weeks ago, right? It's like these guys are totally pay to play. It's disgusting. I mean, it's just disgusting. So, but I think you get the picture, right? DeSogra was an excellent witness, and that ended well. But then we go into the voir dire and the battling about the Proctor text messages. And I think why yesterday afternoon felt so defeating to all of us was because we all at the same time had this palpable realization that this judge is going to do everything in her power to stop the defense from presenting their case. That she is going to fight them wherever she can. That she is going to allow Hank absolute liberty to do whatever he wants. He's very, very aware of that. And we know that for sure, based on the information we're getting secondhand through his two accident reconstructionist witnesses who explained very clearly the way that they were interacting with Hank.
I don't believe I got it until April.
So a clip that has been, assume the clip's been in existence for months. You just got the clip.
Dr. Welch, I have to ask you
Oh, I'm
not to
sorry.
refer to
I'm
that.
trying to be helpful.
Close your
Yeah,
computer.
let me close it. Sorry. I was trying to answer his question.
So I'm going to ask you to close the top.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Just flat down. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. So assume the clip that you said was the basis for changing your PowerPoint on May 13th after the trial started had been in existence for months. You just got that clip, you say, in April?
I believe so, yes.
What was tell me the circumstances by which you got the clip. Did you ask for it?
I was told there was a new interview.
Okay. Who initiated the conversation about the new interview?
I don't know if it was Mr. Brennan.
It was someone associated with the prosecution?
Yes, I wouldn't have known about it.
Exactly. So somebody affirmatively communicated with you when about this clip?
I need to look, but I remember it being about mid-April,
Mid-April.
if I'm thinking of the correct clip.
What were you asked to do, if anything, with regard to that clip?
When I got the clip, I wasn't asked to do anything.
What did you do with the clip once you got it?
So they then indicated there was this suggestion of an alternative route. So then I looked at the alternative route description and added the alternative route.
So it was suggested to you by the prosecution that you look at the clip and they pointed out that there was an alternative route they wanted you to look at?
So I took it to be, we have additional evidence. Please look at the additional evidence and add it to your analysis.
And we know that Hank Brennan has full awareness that the judge is going to let him do whatever he wants. And on the other side, I think we also got a sense that because it's very clear that the defense does not want to call Michael Proctor, the message that sent to me was that they are scared, that they are afraid of the judge and of Hank, because they know that if they call Michael Proctor, Hank Brennan can lead Proctor somehow into cleaning up the horror show of a testimony that would come out during his direct examination because he's being called by the defense. And that was the tough thing yesterday. The tough thing yesterday was realizing that the defense team is scared of the judge and is scared of Hank. And then to see how disempowering it is for them, because the judge is going to beg, borrow, steal, and cheat in order to tip the scales in favor of the Commonwealth. I mean, it's It's just plain as day. I mean, it's not even a question, right? She's going to do anything that she can. And this nod, this award, this Person of the Year award, to me is terrifying now in context, because what it really was a nod to her. Don't you worry, we've got your back no matter what happens. And it made me terrified. If she, God forbid, was convicted, if Karen Read is ever convicted, I don't know that on appeal she's going to do any better, because these people are basically behind the judge 100%. I mean, she was awarded the Person of the Year award. Think about that, right in the middle of this trial. I mean, if that is not a sign, if that is not a clear indicator of them doubling down, there is no other way they could be more clear. Because I think it was really clear to all of us at the end of the day yesterday that that was where we stood. That was where everything stood, because the judge wanted to think about it before she made any specific ruling about how she was going to handle the Proctor texts. I mean, we all know what she's going to do, so it's not even worth talking about. I mean, clearly she's not going to let Proctor's buddy bring in the text messages, right? So clearly Michael Proctor is going to have to be called by the defense if they want to bring in these texts. I think yesterday we were all deflated because it felt like in one moment we're kind of rolling, right? Because it really feels like the defense is winning. And then right after their first witness, who did a great job, there is this huge blow, because we all suddenly become very aware of how dangerous the situation really is. At the lengths that this group of people are going to go to try to convict Karen Read. They are not playing. They treat this like it's a joke. When you realize how much power this woman has, and if she's not going to play by the rules, then what do you do?
Now, if you haven't had a chance to hear Hank Brennan's arguments about why the Proctor texts should come in under Proctor, you have to hear this, because the gaslighting and projection here is rich beyond rich. So you must hear at least an excerpt from it.
I am not opposed to the admission of bias against a witness, especially a police officer, but it should be against that witness, because they need to have the opportunity to admit, deny, define, accept, and explain. By putting these messages in with sidestepping, calling Mr. Proctor, they are trying to gain the advantage of putting information in front of the jury that has no context, suggesting it has a value that has not been defined, and then, as Mr. Yannetti just did, making an argument that because the comment was merely made, that therefore there was a consequence, and specify a consequence where there's no factual basis to conclude. Because he made a derogatory comment, he didn't investigate or speak to a plow driver for a year and a half. That defeats the purpose of defining the value for which this is being admitted. I do have some issue that it's really not under the context of Bowden, because this doesn't have to do with the adequacy of a police investigation. It has to do with bias. And that purely is the state of mind of the person who made the comment. I would not get in the way of confronting the witness about their bias if they were called to the stand. But to put it in this way invites speculation, it invites manipulation, and it invites a party on either side to portray this in a way that is not factually viable. It will be distracting, confusing to the jury, and it could be unfair for either side, because it will lead to arguments about what it means without a factual basis. And so my position is, I don't necessarily disagree that it's relevant, but it should come through Michael Proctor. And if the defense wants the value, they should call Michael Proctor.
What really shook me about that whole series of events I'm sensitive to the idea of playing not to lose. It's probably the lifelong Jets fan inside of me who's afraid of that, right? I have the famous speech by Herman Edwards.
You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win.
He was responding to the criticism that he was playing it safe. He's playing not to lose rather than playing to win. And I fear that by being afraid to call Michael Proctor and not doing it because of something that Hank Brennan may or may not do, that to me feels like playing not to lose. I want to piggyback on my last couple of videos about Judge Beverly Cannone. So over the last couple of months, really, I have been seriously trying to figure out, who is this woman? Why is she so obviously biased, right? Is this a woman having a post-midlife crisis? Is this a mentally ill person? Is this a full-on corrupt woman? Like, what is going on? Does she think that Karen Read is guilty? She killed a Boston police officer, so I have an axe to grind with her, and that's that. I've been trying to figure it out. And I've been doing a lot of digging, as you know, into who she is, where she grew up, how she grew up, all of that. And many of you, somehow at some point, I saw the words public defender and conflated it with prosecutor. So in my mind, as I was thinking about who she was, I kept putting her into like the Adam Lally bucket, right? Into like the prosecutor bucket. And that really didn't fit. It was I couldn't make sense of that detail in the larger picture of what I know about this woman. But thanks to many of you who had reached out to me, made comments, emails to make sure I knew that she was a public defender, that she spent 30 years as a public defender, that she never worked in the private sector. I had an opportunity to sit with that information and really allow it to sink in, given everything else that I know about this woman. And when I play that tape forward and add in the other bits of information that I shared last time, which is having a heavy heart from losing two of my siblings, young, way prematurely, the behavior that we see that she exhibits in the courtroom, the low frustration tolerance, her constant rushing, her desire to want to get out early, to always be looking to breaks and lunch. And it just always seems like we're inconveniencing Judge Bev. And again, that's a hallmark of substance use disorders, because for obvious reasons, once you become, you start to shift into a more physiologically dependent and psychologically dependent orientation with substances. Of course, you want to get through the day and rush through the day to get home to have your drink, of course, right? But if you have a real physiological proclivity for an alcohol use disorder, that's not a psychological thing. I mean, that's a physical thing. That's your body like starving and angry. And so now you start to get irritable and impatient and urgent, and you can't help yourself. You say and do things that you regret because it doesn't bring out the best in you. And this woman is she's, being live streamed into the homes of millions of people around the world. It doesn't seem like she has any awareness of that, but she certainly is, right? On some level, she knows that we are all watching very, very, very closely. And she still cannot contain herself. She's having these like tantrums, these outbursts where she can't tolerate Robert Alessi's like, a constant attention to detail, his need to explain carefully because he wants to make sure you understand. She's so intolerant of it all and seems to think that it's a show. She seems to think that the defense is not just performing for her and for the jury, but for all of us. And that definitely is part, I think, of why she's so quick to be irritated with Robert Alessi's need to methodically lay out all of his points. She does not have the frustration tolerance, right? She doesn't have the distress tolerance that we would expect from a judge, from a seasoned judge looking to retire next year. Right? So there's definitely something that does not fit. So does that fit? Could Judge Bev have some kind of a substance use disorder based on those behavioral indicators that we're seeing? Sure, definitely. But I will also tell you that many of those behavioral indicators predispose any substance use. So you can have all those things and never drink and never have had a problem with alcohol, right? You can have the proclivity, you can have that, low frustration tolerance, low distress tolerance, irritability, impatience, impulsivity, entitlement, defiance. You can have that kind of general personality structure and never had used alcohol ever. Once I understood that she was a public defender and I sat with that really specific piece of information for a while, I started a picture of who this woman is and why she is so biased against Karen Read started to come more into clear view. I want to first paint a little picture for you about how this woman probably grew up. So if you're not familiar with these suburban Boston towns and communities, many of them were built by the urban sprawl of the Irish Catholic American family. It's like a beer drinking, blue collar, hardworking, patriotic, brotherhood type of communities. These are like strong working people communities built on principles of family, church, sports, beer, Sunday dinners, right? I mean, like everybody going out to the waterfall, everybody going out to the bar to celebrate their 23-year-old son's birthday without the son. He's not there. The whole family's like, oh yeah, we had plans to go out for Brian Jr.'s birthday, but no, Brian didn't go. The whole family went out without him. It's a closed community, a community that is very insular. It doesn't like feedback. It doesn't think of itself as a part of the kind of like New England coastal elitist. No. This is a completely different genre. And I don't want to bring politics into it, so I'm going to leave it out. Also important to know, everybody in these communities has a sibling or a cousin or a dad or an uncle who is in the military, who's a police officer, who's a firefighter, who's trying to become a firefighter, who wants to go into the Marines, who is getting back from the Army, or who's retiring from the fire department. That is the type of community we are talking about. Judge Bev's father, who actually grew up in Somerville, which is interesting because that's actually a town I'm pretty familiar with. My sister lived in. And so when I think about this community, oftentimes Somerville is the community that comes to mind most. He was a war veteran. He served in the Korean War. He was a criminal lawyer, but he was the assistant DA for many years. And he was a public defender also.
And with investigating this judge, it's clear that she was a daddy's girl. She was the female in the family who followed in her daddy's footsteps. So I think it's pretty safe to say that he was who she took her cues from about who she wanted to be in the world, about how you're supposed to be in the world.
A resident of Quincy for more than 40 years, Mr. Prescott coached youth baseball and hockey. He was a lifelong athlete. He also played goalie in the Quincy Senior League. He was a community member. He was a teacher. He was a man who obviously cared about other people, cared about doing the right thing, a man of integrity.
Or at least that's how his daughter, Beverly Cannone, would have perceived him to be. And this is a community that epitomizes what amounts to almost a blue wall, but it's the Norfolk County blue wall. It's a very large subset of this community who stick together and protect each other.
A community that represents the epitome of this Boston strong dynamic. It's in their blood. And when she sees Karen Reed, a white-collar woman, her father's a professor, this case is centered around Alexis and a Boston police officer who's found dead. Are you with me so far? I'm going to keep going. Karen steps out of the community of Boston and she goes and gets Mr. Hollywood, who is most famous, not for his work as a prosecutor, like with the O.J. Simpson case, but for representing Kevin Spacey. I don't know how much you know about Kevin Spacey, but you probably don't want to know anymore. So clearly throughout the first trial, she had a huge problem with Alan Jackson. Huge. I mean, she hated him. Now we know that she's transferred her anger mostly to Mr. New York. And with Robert Alessi, you have the epitome of Mr. New York. And I love him. I have a crush on Bob Alessi. I just love him. I love him. I do. I absolutely love him. But he's Mr. New York. So you have this kind of like, here are the coastal elites, the big fancy defense attorneys with their fancy suits coming in here, coming into my courtroom and trying to show me up, right? I'll show them who's the boss. I believe that this woman has made each and every aspect of this case personal. She's made it about her. And maybe in years past, she's been better equipped to deal with the trigger, the aspects of this case that were triggering emotionally. But my guess is she lost a brother tragically, prematurely, last year in August. She's lost a sister tragically back in 2015. So there's a grief, there's heaviness around this family. They are Irish American. There's alcoholism in their genes somewhere. Even if she doesn't actually drink, she's got all the check for the disposition for it. And you don't have to drink to have many of the fundamental traits that we would see with somebody who was. Certainly, it would be much, much worse if she is drinking. I think what you have in this judge is somebody who has an internal struggle that she's kind of warring out between the part of her that wanted to go on and be the fancy, big shot defense attorney with the nice car, the flashy stuff, the flashy reputation, right? The coastal elite reputation. The big, tough, dominant defense attorney, the person who represents the guilty people who can afford to pay you. I'm guessing that she, as much as she was taught to disdain it, to loathe it, to not want no part of that, how could you? That's disgraceful. It's disgusting. How could you use your talents and knowledge of the law to represent a criminal for money? For somebody like her, it's the arrogance, it's the ego that wants that wants people to know who she is when she walks in the room, right? How do we know that? Because she's a judge. So eventually she found a way to get to that place, right? Without having to be a criminal defense attorney for the stars or whatever. Think about how most of us have been taught to think about who a public defender is. You hear the word public defender and some like bumbling idiot who's just out of law school comes to mind, who can barely dress themselves, right? I mean, we as a culture do not think about the public defenders of the world as incredibly graceful, tactful, big shot lawyers, right? We think about those people representing P. Diddy, Karen Reed. So for this woman, she's playing out this internal battle between all that she's been taught, born and raised and bred, because she's never left this community, guys. This is home. She was born, raised, and bred by this community, this blue-collar community. She does not identify with the coastal elites, even though technically, hate to be the bearer of bad news, she's kind of one of them. She's a lawyer. But she identifies herself as on the side of truth and justice and honor and integrity. So frankly, I'm not sure she cares very much about whether or not Karen Reed is innocent or guilty. I think what she's more focused on is Robert Alessi and Alan Jackson, and the fact that she doesn't want them to win. She needs to be in control. She needs to be the one with the power. She needs to make sure they understand she holds all the power, not them. I believe this so much so that if I were advising Karen Reed and her attorneys, I would be coaching them on how to, this is going to sound completely insane, but I think you have to do this with her. How can you build into your case some way to feed her ego so that she feels like she's in control and you're over here unable to be harmed by her ego? Because that is what's going on here. Alan Jackson and Robert Alessi represent everything that she despises and loathes, but also envies about law, the legal system, and who she is as a person. That is why I believe that this judge is having such a fundamentally strong and difficult time managing her reactions to Karen Reed and her lawyers. She doesn't like that Karen Reed is getting up and going to the sidebars. She doesn't like that Karen Reed is well dressed, that she looks, acts, and sounds. If you didn't know any better, you might think she was one of her attorneys. And while logically she knows that, of course, that's well within her rights, and she would probably do the same thing if she was in Karen Reed's shoes, she still doesn't like any challenge, anybody looking at her cross-eyed. When I am confident and comfortable in who I am, in the choices that I've made, in the life that I'm living, when I can look myself in the mirror and say, you know what, I like myself today. I don't have shame or guilt, or I don't feel like I hurt somebody today, at least not on purpose. I don't feel like I used my time, effort, and energy on this planet in some nefarious or malicious way. And I like me. I did the things I wanted to do. I did not feel held back in any way. When you are able to love who you are or like who you are, you don't have that kind of defensiveness. You don't have anything to prove. You don't care about what Alan Jackson is doing. You understand that Alan Jackson is doing what he's supposed to do. He's the defense attorney for Karen Reed. He's supposed to behave like he does, right? There's no charge in it for you because you don't care. So if something is triggering, if you're having a reaction to something, no matter what it is, even if it's something that we all would agree is bad, it's not really about the thing you think it is. It's really about you. It's about your constitution. Even with this case, right? Why are we all so angry and incensed about this? Because it's intolerable to sit with the idea of what they're doing to this woman for me, right? I feel that a sense of injustice is taking place and therefore compelled to take action on it. But it isn't, at the end of the day, an external thing. It's an internal thing. In this case, however, the judge is supposed to be the neutral authority. She's supposed to be the referee in the room. She's not supposed to be a referee who is trying deliberately to pick the winner, the umpire who calls balls and strikes in favor of the team they want to win the game. Because that is what she is doing. And that is the problem. As we say in psychology, her shit is bleeding out into the courtroom. She's not able to contain her emotions. It's coming out in a way that she cannot control. That is being triggered by what's going on in the room. If I were sitting in a room with Hank Brennan, I promise you, I would be triggered by it because I can't stand him. I'm sure I could dig deeply into my psyche about why, but I don't need to because it's not significant enough to me. I am not the judge on Karen Reed's murder case. And could alcohol be a part of this? Of course. Of course it could be. I mean, that's a whole other aspect, right? I just don't have any evidence of that. And so it's difficult for me to speculate wildly about her drinking if I have no idea whether alcohol is a part of her life. For all I know, she could be in recovery for 40 years. I don't know. I can't say what she's doing in her personal time, but I can tell you that she's bleeding out all over the place psychologically, emotionally. And something is causing that. Whether that is a underlying temperament, she's always been that way. I doubt it. I don't know how you get this far in life if that's just how you are. A week before I went on my trip to Canton, to Canton and to Dedham, my sister had gone, and she was saying that she was coming out of a coffee shop, and before she looked left or right, she smelled this heavy air of cologne, and immediately looked to her left, and there was Karen's attorneys. It was Alessi, Jackson, and Miss Little. And there was this really heavy smell of cologne, men's cologne. And that to me sort of epitomizes what's happening with this judge. Every day she's coming into that tiny little courtroom, and in walks this group of people with this air of confidence who are literally filling up the space charismatically with their physical presence, with their words, even with how they smell. I think the judge is reacting to that. And I will continue to stand by, has some kind of long-standing personal relationship with Michael Morrissey that goes back. Probably their parents knew each other. I don't see how you could both be attorneys. I just don't see how you could live in that community, be traveling in the same circles your entire lives, and not only know each other, but know each other well. And he needs her. He needs her. So he's going to do anything and everything in his power to make sure that she is on his team and that she is an operator for him in that courtroom, which is really sad, because here's the last thing I will say tonight about this. If she continues to behave the way that she is right now, if she continues to be short-tempered, continues to be impatient, snippy, rude, arrogant with Karen Reed and her attorneys, she is going to be carrying shame and guilt about that behavior forward. Not because anybody's making her feel bad, but because she knows it is not the correct way to behave. And she cares deeply about how she is perceived, no matter what she tells you or anybody else. She cares. That's her courtroom. That's why she's so triggered, because she doesn't like being challenged. And she wants to show these big, strong, coastal elitist lawyers, these big, tough lawyers, these smart lawyers, that she's smarter, she's better, she's in control. She's the one with all the power. She can squash them if she wants to, right? That's why I said something is wrong with this woman. This is not the way a person behaves when you've spent your entire life working for a career to become a judge. Okay? You don't work this hard throughout your entire life, deal with the school and all the crap that comes with it. Years of BS that she's gone through to become a judge, to behave the way that she is now. This is how this woman is going to spend the rest of her life being known. For the rest of her life, she is going to be attached. She's going to be Miss Piggy. And at some point, it is going to register what that means. Because this is a born and bred Massachusetts South Shore native. I mean, she's going to know. She's going to feel a little sensitive when the person at the convenience store she always goes to doesn't look at her squarely anymore, won't smile at her anymore. She's going to feel it when she goes to say hi to the auto mechanic that she always goes to, and he just dismisses her. She's going to feel that the community has turned against her, if she hasn't already. And the tragedy here is she's going to feel that forever. That damage may very well be already done. So this is a sad and tragic way to wrap up, to end a life of service to your community as a public defender and as a defender of law truth and justice. And all of this means if this woman just got some good psychotherapy, she'd probably be fine. Karen Reed would get to go on her merry way. All would be well. She would have no dog in the fight, no stake in this game. She would not care so much about the outcome. All right, you guys. So once again, I appreciate all of your comments and emails. I have been trying to get to as much and as many of them as I possibly can. We read every single comment. I can't always respond because I naturally am too long-winded. And so I try to respond and it winds up being like a book and I can't get to like anybody. So I believe me, we care deeply about every comment. We hear you and cannot tell you how grateful I am for your support. Everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend. Be well, stay safe.
God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything.